Welcome to Women in the Arena podcast, the podcast celebrating women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. I'm your host, Audra Egan, and our mission is to elevate the value, strength, and resilience each woman brings to the world. Without further delay, let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome in, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me again this week. My guest this week, she's my hero because she has learned how to hack the system. Amy Birks is, first of all, she is an award-winning growth strategist, an opportunity hacker. I told you that she's a hacker, and she is an award-winning author. She is also a corporate America survivor and an absolutely courageous and bodacious single mom who has figured out how to create a business, not only to sustain her life, but to be able to spend more time with her daughter. Isn't that the dream? She's here to share with us some of her journey, as well as some tips for us to hack our own life. It is both my pleasure and my honor to introduce to you Amy Birks. Amy, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh, Audra, thank you so much for having me. You did so great. I love that.
Thank you.
Great job on the intro. Well done, sister.
Thank you. And just as a side note, I tell every guest that I record with, the hardest part of the interview is the intro because it's the only thing that is sort of kind of scripted and I screw it up all the time. So those of you that have recorded with me, I don't often do it first take, but somehow, I don't know, maybe I had enough coffee this morning and I did it first take. So we're doing great so far, Amy. We're ahead of the game.
Hashtag winning. We are doing great.
Yes, we're doing great. So I have Amy with me this week because she has such an amazing background, and we're going to dive into a really cool topic that we've been wanting to talk about for weeks. We had weather involved that couldn't allow us to record. So we're here now, but I want Amy to give you a little bit of her background and how she arrived at where she is at right now. So Amy, tell us a little bit about you and your journey to today.
Oh my goodness. There are so many different ways that I feel like I could start, at 5 years old being the kid with the friends on the street corner or selling the, lemonade across the street from the park where I grew up, or like I could, come forward in time and talk about, being the 22-year-old who was miserable in her life, living in New York and wanted so badly to get out of the terrible relationship, find a career that was meaningful and move west. And then like got the God shot, the proverbial like moment of clarity that said, if you're waiting to have something in your life that's meaningful and positive and powerful, then it, because you're afraid, then it can't possibly get any worse. And I'm just like kind of teasing into what we're about to talk about today here, by the way. But there's like so many, I think, different things that have put me on the path to being here where I am today. And so much of it, like all of the different stories of my life and my life's journey that allow me to feel like I can be, like the triumphant heroine of my life, come from this idea that I was willing to look at what I was really afraid of and decide that I didn't have to be afraid of any of these things, and that I wasn't actually going to die if I decided to end the shitty relationship and quit the terrible job and leave New York and move west. Like all of those things weren't going to kill me. And all of the things that so far, right. I'm still standing here. I'm talking to you. We're recording right now. So I'm still alive. My life is thriving. I've got an amazing 7-year-old daughter. And, so all of the things that I've been through have been because I've been able to make these conscious choices to feel more powerful and to not let fear be the thing that's kept me from anything that I really want to create in my life. And by the way, it's taken me, like, I wasn't conscious of what I was doing when I was 22, like I did have that moment where I heard God say, you're too afraid to do these things because you're afraid it's going to be worse on the other side. But if that's stopping you from having new experiences and doing these things and like having a life filled with joy and abundance, then it can't possibly get any worse than this. So you might as well just go for it. But other than that, like it's just been this like meandering path of serendipity and pain and suffering and lots of moments of feeling tremendous fear and also knowing that now here where I am today, looking back on all that and going, oh my gosh, yes, all of that was me really being willing to lean into all that and decide that it was okay. Like I could do it. I'm not going to die. And then I didn't. And then here I am, you know?
I think your story is very similar to many of ours. It's certainly similar to mine that you think that you're doing what you need to do. You think you're doing what you have to do, which is okay, I got to go to college, I got to get a job, I got to work in corporate America. Hopefully it's meaningful work. If it's not, I'll just grin and bear it and go on lots of vacations. And you're finding that that's just simply not the compromise that you have to make. So let's first take it from you're a single mom, languishing in corporate America, just being miserable because, guys, let's face it, corporate America is
It's a
not built
miserable
for
place.
women. It's not built for women.
It's
It is
not.
not. It is not built for women because our needs are different. But what I want to know is take us to that space of you're in corporate America, you have this beautiful daughter, and you're realizing this isn't working. So, where are you and what's going on through your head and your heart?
Oh, such a great question. And I love how you frame this. I agree. I think I look at my friends who are still in corporate. I do, and I talk to a lot of people on LinkedIn these days who are in jobs and like building side hustles. And even in my former marriage, my ex-husband is somebody who really felt like there was all this security and safety in having a corporate career. And what's interesting is that now these days I look at it all and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so like we get a job like that and then we're taking all of our it's like taking all of our pennies, right? As somebody who works in finance that, I know that you do and that was my corporate gig before I finally started my own thing. It's like taking every single penny we have and putting it in one really risky stock, like very, very volatile, like, putting everything into Bitcoin or something like that. Right. And saying like, for sure, that's going to support me forevermore. Like it's going to be there when I need it, definitely 100% when I'm ready to retire. And the reality is that, now that I'm on the other side of that being an entrepreneur, I realize that, oh my gosh, no, I get to bet on me. I'm not like beholden to some company who doesn't understand me as a woman, who doesn't appreciate my talents and skills, who is going to, even regardless of my gender identity, is going to see me as a number and who is completely and 100% expendable at all times. And so when I worked, like my career was very meandering, like, starting like you were talking about shoulds and need tos and have tos. And, when I went to college right out of high school, it was because I was just like under the impression that this is the thing that you do, right? I had no like understanding or awareness of any other potential or options. And I was like, no, you just go to high school out of college. I remember running into a friend in the summer after high school. And I was like, what are you doing for college? Like, where are you going for college? And she's like, oh, I'm not going. I'm taking a gap year and I'm going to travel. And I was like, oh, what? It was like the record player, like, I was like, I don't understand what you're talking about. The words don't compute. What do you mean you go to college? That's what you do. You just go to college. And so, and I wasn't happy there. Right. So like, and then I dropped out after my second semester and was like, F this, I got to figure out who I am and like understand what I want and how I have value in the world. And so I went on this path of seeking and ended up in corporate America after like selling cars and working in nonprofits and working in fine dining and, doing all of these different things, and ended up in finance working as a strategic planner and project manager. It was awesome. Like the experience was amazing. I got, I worked for a company at the time that was really, really good at actually like valuing me, which was something that I was seeking. I was like seeking external opportunities to be valued, to know my value rather than like coming inward, which I know now is the real journey. But what was interesting is that every job that I was taking, I was either looking for that, like looking for an opportunity to be externally validated, or I was also looking for an opportunity to work in a job that had meaning. like, wow, I really like, I am here to do more, right? This is something that I was always clear on. Growing up, I felt like such a weirdo. Like I'm a total misfit. I had lots of friends, but I was like, also felt like I don't think any of them actually get me at all because I feel like such a weirdo because I want to help the world and I want to do more. And what I'm learning now is that we all, I think, have that have that feeling, unless we're total narcissists or something like that. In any case, that job was great because it provided me all these skill sets and really allowed me to hone my skills as a strategist. It was something that always came natural to me. I say I have this GPS brain that can connect dots to, whatever the thing is that somebody wants to create and find the most efficient, effective, and fun way to get there. But at the same time, I kept having to rationalize what the job meant to my soul. Like, oh, I work for this company and I'm supporting these projects that help 150,000 retail team members. And that's great because then, we've got all these customers out in the world and they're helping them succeed financially. And so I'm making an impact that way. But it was all rationalization. And so it was that, like, that kind of thread that kept like unweaving itself from my desire to stay employed. But then it was also every time I filled out a PTO request for time off or vacation time, it was like I felt like I kept getting stabbed in the back. Like, here, your time is not your own. Let's like punch you in the face every time you got to say, may I please have my time to enjoy my life? Like, what is that? What is that? And so it ultimately became untenable. I had my daughter. She was born not, I guess I think I had actually already left my job by the time that she was born. And it's going to been I've been an entrepreneur for 9.5 years, but it was that, like, this idea that I want a job, like I want a career, I want to do work in the world that has true meaning, that is actually creating, like, that's got purpose behind it, that's supporting the world in a really positive way. And time is our absolutely most precious, non-renewable commodity. No matter what you think about what the construct of time means, like as humans, we tend in the world that we live in these days, right? Like in the modern world, we experience time as a limited resource. It passes, it's gone. We don't get those moments back. And so I wanted to be there for the daughter that I knew I was getting ready to have. And so I left the job and I started the business as a side hustle and then got to a point where I couldn't do both and started working for myself. And then, kind of fast forward a few years, now that I'm a single mom, there's like a whole other piece of that story that I can share, whenever you're ready for me to do that, or if you want me to, about like what becoming a single mom while being an entrepreneur really meant, because it was similar and also different. I had to like go through this whole other transformation as an entrepreneur and as like a woman, independent, powerful woman, of what that was going to look like to be the sole breadwinner and like the only source of income and the person who's responsible for myself and also my child and her growth and development, and being a woman to a daughter and like what all of that meant, and making sure that my business could succeed. And there was a lot there.
There's a lot there, but I know that it's resonating. There's lots of things in there that is resonating with people listening, myself included. And I want to talk to you just for a moment about the construct of time. And I know that people are like, yeah, but time could be fluid. It can, based on your perception. However, there is one undisputable thing about time that you cannot change. And it's something that I just experienced over the weekend. So officially, as of Saturday night, my husband and I are empty nesters.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I know. And this is why I say this is undisputable, because, we have 2 children. This is our youngest. And, they both went and lived on campus when they were in college. And so, we have had a mini experience of empty nesters, but this is different. Mm-hmm. Their rooms were full. All of their furniture was there. A lot of their stuff was there that they didn't want to take with them to school. And they came home back and forth. This is when you become very aware of the passage of time, when you stand in their empty bedrooms. Mm. That is when you realize how fast time goes. And I've had that realization over the weekend. when I stood in their rooms and went, oh, this is real. Oh my gosh. And I still don't know quite how to feel about it because I haven't really let myself feel about it that then.
Yeah.
But I have a trip coming up for my job. Maybe I'll cry on the plane. You know, you never know.
I think airplanes are a great place for that kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yes. But I wanted to stop for a moment and acknowledge that time means something, especially when you have children and you're watching them grow up and it's this commodity that you can't make more of.
Mm-hmm.
I can't go back in time and visit my children when they were 5. I can't go backwards.
Yeah.
So, your point of what are we exchanging our time for? The one resource we can't make more of. What are we changing it for? And you decided that what you were experiencing wasn't enough value for your time, and you decided to leap into something that was terrifying and mind-blowing and exhausting and exhilarating all at the same time. And that's one of the things that we want to leap from and talk about right now, which is fear and
Mm-hmm.
what holds us back and how powerful we really, really are, but we're terrified of our own power. So I will I will let you take it from there because you are the expert on feeling fear but going ahead and doing it anyway because you are somehow this this expert at finding connections where other people don't see them. And
Mm.
part of your power is using fear to do it. And in a good way. So I know that that sounds very strange, but using fear to make connections, but it makes sense. It makes sense. So I'll let Amy explain this to you and because I can't do it justice.
Thank you. Yeah, I love the way that you just said that. You know, it's interesting because, as I mentioned before, I think that my journey has been really interesting because you know, like hindsight is 2020. They say that, right? In retrospect, I can look back and see all these milestone moments in my life where I was confronted with an opportunity to make a choice, right? And almost always there's fear in the mix there, right? Like there's something to be afraid of that I'm choosing. I can either be afraid of this and go and allow my life to remain small, comfortable, familiar, or I can say, okay, this is really, really, really effing uncomfortable, but I'm going to allow myself to be in this discomfort because I know it's not actually going to kill me. And then probably it's going to be better on the other side. I can't think of a time in my life where I've been faced with one of those decision points. Like, again, looking back in retrospect, where I've been faced with one of those decision points where it wasn't better for me on the other side of the fear, like facing the fear, being willing to be uncomfortable, riding it out, and then going forth in the new direction. It's just like if I've been true to myself and I've actually done the math of that equation, there's never been an experience where it's not been better on the other side of it. It may have been a meandering path to get to the better, like with some more bumps and bruises and, you know, scrapes and things like that, but it always has been better on the other side. And I think that what's so interesting, you know, I think about, you know, my leap out of corporate and into entrepreneurship. Like I tend to have a low risk tolerance. That's just me. And I never really knew that that was something that was inherently part of who I was, because growing up as a child, I was very like, as a little girl, I was like so cautious and wanted to be in control of everything. And I don't want to climb up there because it's scary, or I'm not going to ride my bike until I'm 10 because I don't want to, you know, like all of those things. But at the same time, you know, I have taken lots of risks, and especially as I've grown older. And I think, you know, making that move at 22 was probably the catalyst for a lot of that, because I was able to see proof within myself that I could trust myself to make good decisions and to do things that are scary and hard, and realize, wow, I'm not, like, I can actually make good choices and it's not worse. Like, it's actually better. And so what I think is so fascinating about us as humans, especially women, is that, you know, we have these brains that have evolved from, you know, however many hundreds of thousands or more years, that have not evolved as fast as the rest of us have. So like there's this, you know, amygdala, right? This part of our brain that is wired and intended to keep us safe from harm. But it still thinks that around every corner is a freaking saber-toothed tiger. So like every decision point that we come up against that's going to challenge what's familiar and comfortable for us, or give us an opportunity to grow and change, because, oh my God, the little human inside does not like change, then our mind is like, no, 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 don't do it. And then like creates all these really hidden, not so obvious, very tricky ways to get in the way of that. You know, it comes up as for like in forms of resistance or excuses. I'm looking at all this stuff with wide eyes these days, because I really am just not interested in letting fear be the primary driver of what I do in my life. Mostly, you know, because for me, like I want my life to be big and vibrant and vital and powerful. But I also have this 7-year-old, right? This 7-year-old woman to be who is watching everything I do, and I model everything for her. And so if I am afraid, or if I am afraid for her or about her or whatever, that's imprinting on her. And so it's so critically important to me that I be able to show up as a model of what's possible when you are a damn powerful, you know, like successful by whatever definition that means for you, present, loving, kind force of nature, so that she can see and embody and feel what that experience is for herself too. And I have no idea what your question was, or there was something else I was going to say, and I just totally lost the plot, but we can continue on from there, I'm sure.
And, you know, I think I don't remember what the plot was either. However, I think that was all incredibly important to say, because I have started to become aware of my own power. And this is something that has taken a long time to get here. I'm 51. It took me a long, long time to figure out how powerful I truly am. And not just me, but all of the women around me are just forces to be reckoned with. And our greatest threat is ourselves, because of that fear that you're talking about, that fear that is designed to keep us safe. Because, come on, we are women, we are vulnerable. I travel by myself for work. I'm very aware that I am by myself, and I'm on the lookout for the saber-toothed tiger on every single corner.
Yep.
So it's hard not to separate. I'm on alert for physical harm versus I'm holding myself back because I'm afraid of the what if. So I want to talk about that, holding yourself back from what could be because of the what if. And like I said, this is something that we've inherited, because DNA dictates for the most of us, not all of us, but for most of us, that we are the family protectors. We protect our children. We protect our husbands from themselves. Come on, guys. You know this is true.
Right.
How many times do you have to kick your husband under the table? Like, do you realize you said that out loud, right? That wasn't actually in your head. That came out your mouth. Right. Maybe that's just my husband. I don't know. But we are the nucleus of the family. We are the ones that are supposed to be the steady and holding everything in. So how do we somehow make peace with, yes, we have to be the steady constant, but we also cannot hold ourselves back from what we were destined to be? It's that weird fear thing that, is it real or is it imagined? So let's start there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so many things within this, the like all the different threads that we could pull here, you know, like we could talk about the societal norms that we participate in that have created the opportunity for us to feel like that is our responsibility, right? And that everybody is like, yes, that just is your responsibility. Yes, go ahead, play that role for sure. That is the thing you should do. And I think that, you know, part of what I think about when it comes to that like quandary of what if versus what's possible, because to me it's like what if or what's possible. And so the thing that I'm constantly thinking about when it comes to that is that our brains are wired to find the saber-toothed tiger. My very good friend and coach, Jeff Sanders, calls it being in constant threat assessment mode. We're like looking around, like, where is the thing? Where is the thing? But we're also creating confirmation bias every time we're looking for the thing, because then we're going to start seeing it, right? So if you're somebody who is, who lives in the country because you're afraid that the city is a dangerous place, then every time you go to the city, you believe that is true. Like, that is a belief that you have ingrained in your system, and your amygdala is like, yep. Our brains, scientifically speaking, our brains can only process so much data at once. And so, because there's like constant information coming at us, like we're looking at a gazillion bits of data in every single moment in time. There's just like stuff everywhere. There's a plant in front of me. I've got, a crystal here and bowls there and you here and my computer and cups and like all the stuff. And it can't process all of it. And so our brains wire themselves to only take in through this filter, this lens that we create, the things that we are really committed to and believe in. And so if you're somebody who lives in the country because you believe the city is unsafe, you're going to go to the city and your brain is going to be like, great, we're not going to see any of the reasons why the city is awesome and fun and safe. We are only going to see that guy over there who is probably experiencing homelessness because he's got mental illness, unfortunately, and he's going to look like a threat to me because I am certain that the city is an unsafe place to be. So like, it's wild and fascinating to me that is what happens. But I think that knowing that is true is also really powerful, because at the same time, like, that is like, sure, you could feel like the guy over there is creating an unsafe environment for you. That could for sure be your reality. But at the same time, there's like a gazillion, so like other what ifs, right? Like what if I start my business and I quit my job and it fails? Like, that is always the thing that our mind is going to focus on. It's going to create a path to that trajectory. It's just going to do that because it wants to validate that it is true. Our minds want to be useful. They want to create safety and comfort and familiarity for us because that is what works for our mind. But it's not what works for us and our soul and our spirit and, our full potential. I don't really even love that term because I feel like that in itself is like a whole can of worms that we tend to like stuff ourselves into to say like, I have all this potential that I'm not meeting and let me hate on myself for not doing that. But anyway, I think that what's so interesting is that there's this one possibility that I start the business and it fails. Like, that's one end to end that could be a dot that gets connected. Yes. But we live in an abundant universe. We live in an like, scientifically, it's constantly growing. We know that's true. There's potential everywhere. And there are infinite number of other potentialities and possibilities that could also occur. I could start the business and become a gazillionaire. I could start the business and decide that I hate it and want to go back to having a job. I could start the business and win the lottery. I could start the business and aliens could land and be like, you are so freaking cool and let's take you to Mars. Like, all of these things are equally as possible as the one thing that our mind gets fixated on of the what ifs. And so our job, if we can, if we are willing to allow ourselves, this is not even it, if we are more, like even just 1% more committed to our own growth than we are to staying the same and really dying, because if we're not growing, we're just stagnant and we're dying. Then if we're just even that much, you can't see me because you're not watching the video, but like my fingers are just like barely even touching, like this much more committed to our own growth, then we can start to move in a trajectory where all those other possibilities can be more available to us, because we're like, wow, I wonder why it is that is the only thing that I see when I think about going to the city. That is interesting. I wonder what else is possible. That's one of my favorite questions when it comes to fear, is like, what else is possible? I think curiosity, by the way, is the antidote to fear. My best friend Kelly and I talk about this all the time. She's a brilliant leadership coach and personal development coach. And I feel so lucky that she's my best friend, because I would not be the powerful woman that I am without her influence in my life. But we talk about this all the time. Like, wow, I wonder what else is possible. What other questions could I ask here that might create more opportunity? Like, isn't that interesting that I did that thing again? Like, I'm falling into that pothole again, huh? And so curiosity is just always, always, always the best tool that we have when we're noticing that we have an opportunity to maybe move away from fear and more towards potentiality. And I'll just say one more thing on this, by the way, because I think it's also, as women, and especially if we're mothers, we like, I think there's something to be said for prudence. This is another thing that Jeff said once, like when COVID was starting to become a thing, right? Like in 2020, I was like, I'm really like, I know that I don't like, fear is always a projection into the future. It's good. Like anything that we're afraid of is always on its way, no matter what it is. No matter what it is, it's always on its way. It's not here right this second. Even if somebody's standing in front of you with a gun, the thing that we're afraid of is what's going to happen after they pull the trigger, which hasn't happened yet. And so we always have a choice. It doesn't feel like that because we're running these like scenarios and these things through our system, these processes and stories and ways of being that we're so used to, but it's always a projection in the future. And that brings me so much comfort because whenever I notice in my body and I feel that, oh wow, I'm feeling anxious, I'm afraid, like I wonder what that's about, then I can unpack it and remember, oh, it's not real anyway. It never is. And it's only going to limit my potential if I continue to lean into it. And so that said, I think there's also an opportunity for prudence because I'm not going to go and be like taking my 7-year-old to the Newburgh Beacon Bridge and being like, let's go for a swim and jump 500 feet down, right? Like we're not going to do that. But at the same time, I'm also going to encourage her when she's afraid of asking the guy at the ice cream stand for the ice cream that she wants. And like wants me to do it. I'm going to be like, you got this, girl. No, you go do it. It's okay to be afraid and you can do the thing anyway. You can do the hard thing. So there's like a balance. And I think that the more that we're like, it's either this or that, it's black or white, like we, find our way in the in between, there's like shades of gray. And I'm constantly being reminded of this throughout my own life that our minds want everything to be very clean, neat, and orderly. And clean, neat, and orderly is it's either right or it's wrong. It's black or it's white. It's yes or it's no. You're either going to die or you're going to, I don't even know what the mind is always like, you're just going to die. Like, dude, don't do the thing because you're going to die. Don't change,
It's self-preservation, but what you're talking about is retraining your brain to not always go to the worst possible outcome or the worst case scenario.
Yep.
So as a coach, how are you helping your clients get out of that system of fear? And I realize that the brain's likes to take the path of least resistance. And for whatever reason, and I don't know why, I'm sure that there is a brilliant scientist out there that knows the exact reason why. I haven't interviewed them yet, but I'm sure I'll get to you. That our brains always want to go to the negative. That's the path of least resistance, is negative. Mm-hmm. Somehow the positive is always the long way around. It's always the harder way to get there. Mm-hmm. But how do our brains are these amazing machines. So machines can be reprogrammed. How do we reprogram ourselves to not always want to be fear avoidance and instead lean in to what could be, what the possibility is?
I love that you asked this question. I think it's such a wonderful question to ask because it's tricky, And so what I think is interesting also about humans is that, especially in our country, in America, right? Like we want what we want and we want it now. We have this expectation that things are going to show up and they're going to show up right away. And that's not to say that like we're not interested in hard work. Like I think the other thing that's really interesting about this country is that we have this expectation that we work hard and we work hard and we work hard and we work hard and then we die. And that is what creates our experience of having value. And if we don't do all of that, then we don't have value. And that was why the PTO requests were always like so asinine to me. I'm like, why? What this can't be what life is all about, is waiting and waiting and waiting to enjoy. Like there's so much here to enjoy. So I think that, what's really wild is that, oh my God, I totally lost my train of thought. Ask the question again. That just fell right out of my brain. Oh my God. Ask the question one more time.
That is hilarious. This is what happens when you record.
Feel free to leave it in. I'm so not afraid for all of the listeners to hear me totally mess that up. I love it. Please.
See, even experts have moments where they're like, "What was I saying?"
I have no
So,
idea.
see, you all are not alone. If your train of thought derails, you have
You are not
company.
alone.
So, like, I'll rephrase the question as to how do we retrain our brains
Yes.
not to automatically go to that fearful spot and keep us there?
Yeah.
I think that's the big deal. I don't think the big deal is that we feel fear. I think that we feel fear and we let it keep us hostage.
Hmm.
I think what we need to know is how do we retrain our brains to realize that fear may not necessarily be the worst thing that could possibly be.
Oh
How
my
do we
gosh.
do it anyway, basically?
Thank you. I'm so glad you said that part right there. I have this book. My friend Bob Levant wrote a book called Finding Polaris, and he's a big proponent of leaning into fear. He's got this tattoo on his right bicep that he can look at every day in the mirror. That is an Emerson quote that says, "What we fear doing most is usually what we most need to do." And one of Bob's quotes from the book is always RSVP with "will attend" when fear invites you. And I love that idea, right? Like it's exactly like you just said. And I think that it's hard to do it because I think what's so interesting is that it's happening under the surface. It's happening in our subconscious mind. We're not necessarily even aware it's there. Sometimes we might actually feel the anxiety, right? Like, oh God, I'm about to, go to this big conference and I got to show up and I'm going to be on this panel with all these people who are really amazing. You can feel that. You can draw a line, like a linear connection from this feeling that I'm having is fear to this event that's about to come. But oftentimes we are just running these processes that are autonomic in our systems because they've been there since had an experience when we were 3 years old, like from traumas and things like that. And we don't even realize that they're holding us back. For me right now, this looks like leaning into intimacy. I want so badly to have close relationships with people that I care about, really with everybody. Like I want to be able to go deep and be seen and allow for that to be okay. And it feels so wildly uncomfortable when somebody has appreciation for me and really sees me. And I physically, like, I feel it. And then I'll do things like I'll react because I'm feeling that discomfort and not even realize that I've done it. There's a guy that I went on a date with, and he was like so appreciative and so loving and so kind and sees me so clearly. And I'm like, nope, this isn't working. And like could make up all these reasons why it's not going to work. And then I realized I was like like all of it would like be very valid, right? Like I could say this box didn't get checked or that box didn't get checked or whatever. But the reality is that none of that even matters. And that what was really going on is that underneath the surface, my whole system is like, red alert, this guy sees you. There's a possibility that you could actually have a close, intimate relationship with somebody. And that is very scary and don't do it. So I think that when it comes to how we move from that place of, being able to retrain our brains to see the things that are more beneficial and less driven by fear is number one is to have an intention, right? I was talking about that like teeny tiny 1%. You got to want it 1% more than you don't want it. So have an intention of what it is that you would rather be noticing. So if it's like the scenario of the person who's living in the country and the city is scary, but oh my God, I really see an opportunity to be spending more time in the city. It would be really good for me. There are people there and friends there and things there. Then, okay, cool. Like I'm going to get more comfortable with spending time in the city and seeing what is also magical about being there. So like have an intention. I think the second piece then is to be like super uber relentlessly committed to awareness, your self-awareness. And for me, the shortcut to that, what that looks like is paying attention to what's physically happening in my body, like knowing what my baseline state is when I'm centered, when I'm balanced, when I've got my shit together, and what it feels like when I'm out of balance and or feeling fear, anxiety, like any of those emotions that we label. And for me, what that feels like is, oh, I've got butterflies in my stomach, or I'm feeling choked up in my throat, or my shoulders are really tense, or my butt is clenched, or like whatever, like I'm snapping at my kid, like it happens is like just even trying to leave the house to get to school on time. Like somebody's going to think something of me, the teachers, the other parents at the drop off, like there's that single mom who's always late. And so none of that, right? I'm not actively thinking about that. but that is what my system is running and is in the background, is like this process. You mentioned computers, machines. Like there's this
Mhm.
system, this process that's running in the background going, oh, you're going to be judged, and you're going to be judged as wrong, and there is some terrible trajectory that puts you on that means you're going to die alone because you were late dropping your kid off at school. So now we got to like have a reaction. So I pay attention to what's happening in my body. And then once I notice it, like that's a great cue, because then I can feel it. I can feel it. Oh God, I'm feeling choked up. I'm feeling that sensation in my stomach. Then I can say, oh, now I get it. Now I know what's going on. Got it. Okay. I don't have to go down the rabbit hole of the story of whatever was causing the anxiety. Like, oh shit, I'm going to this thing and I'm going to speak on that stage and they're all going to judge me and I'm not as good as the other women on this panel. And oh my God, like I don't have to pay any attention to that. I can just say, oh, I'm physically feeling this thing. I put a label on it. I call it anxiety. I call it fear, whatever. And now I'm just going to let it sit there for a minute. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to judge it. I'm just going to let it be. And then it passes like instantly. So I think that's like in the moment, the things that we can do. But I think the other thing that we can do is, our minds need cookies. Like we got to give it a cookie every now and then to say, like, to give it some proof, because it requires zero, literally no proof at all that we're in danger, but it requires years and decades of proof that we have value or that something else might be true besides the thing that it's trying to protect us from. And so it's really a matter of being, so like I think a simple exercise would be whatever the thing is that you're trying to see more of, is to pay attention to when you see it, write it down. Or if it's something about yourself, like I'm trying to value myself more, to notice that I have more value or that I am worthy of whatever, or like I can do the thing that feels really hard, then like do a little look back and write down 10 times when you've already done the thing that you're afraid that you can't do. Because I think that is how we give our mind this cookie to help it start to create a new groove in our brain that will then allow us to start seeing those things instead of the other. And there's lots of other little hacks, like I will sometimes use eyeliner and like write a word on the inside of my wrist to remind myself of something that I want to be my intention for that day. Rather than getting a tattoo, I'm like, okay, today it's about presence, right? Or tomorrow it's about laughing or whatever. Like these are my intentions for the day, the thing that I want to remember to focus on. I'm going to see it there. It's going to spark my memory, and I'm going to be like, oh right, yes, today is about this. I'm going to keep doing this. And also know that sometimes these practices, when we do them with persistence, consistency, and determination, we have to change it up because our brain starts to look at the thing on our wrist and be like, I do that every day and it doesn't really affect me anymore because my brain wants to help me, or my mind wants me to stay small and not and afraid and not change at all. So I just said a lot. Hopefully some of that.
No, there's something that I want to share with you. And it is I'm going to read an excerpt. Yeah, I can speak English.
Yes.
I promise I can. I want to share with you a quote that, if I can find it, and it was, because I will share something with. Hold on, guys, bear with me. That's why I can edit.
We
Uh,
love editors, don't we?
I do. I am the
You are
editor,
the
actually.
yes.
I
Editing software.
Yes, I actually hate the editing part, but I'm also such a control freak of making sure that everybody's voice is heard in the absolute right way. I won't trust it anybody else. So I want
By
to.
the way, that's because you're afraid of something.
Oh, I'm
I
sure. I have no
know.
doubt. I have no doubt. Um, let's see. I want. Hold on. I'm looking for it. I just. Um.
And while you're looking for that, I'll just speak to that, by the way, because I think that's such an
Yes.
easy trap to fall into, is like this idea that it has to be. I was a control freak and still have those tendencies to come, like to pop in from time to time, like being a type A personality all my life, or most of my life, until, probably my late 20s. And I think that again is something that it's sparked by fear. Like I'm afraid that something is going to happen or isn't going to happen. And, and for you with the editing, right? Like it's a
Mm-hmm.
noble reason, like very noble. Like you are very committed to the women that show up on this podcast, to having, like, you want their voices to be heard. That is really important to you. And so I think there are times where the fear it can be useful because it's creating the result that we are really intentional about. And watch for the ways within your business that it also creates an opportunity for you to be like, well, now but I have to do all these things, and it creates a should and a need to and a have to, and then creates the potential for you to like be up late doing that and not hanging out with your husband, or like do like all these other things. It like creates a ripple effect outward from like a very noble intention. And so I think we always have the opportunity to just keep coming back inward and being curious about it and saying like, okay, could it be good enough? Like, is this good enough? Can we just leave it in and have a good laugh at, this idea about like, look at you're searching for the thing, and we're both like human women having this experience, and like, who care? And like, it's great that they get to hear it. And then we get to have this other little bit that we talk about that's also useful for them to hear as well, so that they can go look at themselves and go like, oh yeah, where am I constantly trying to make everything perfect because I have a noble intention, but then it creates this like unintended consequence somewhere else down the road.
And I will tell you that I definitely feel that. And I think to bring this conversation full circle is to be very vulnerable and very transparent with you, because I can't imagine that it would be more perfect than to share this with you. And of course, everybody else is listening. So
I love your bravery and your willingness, by the way. That is amazing. Yeah.
It's kind of terrifying. What I'm about ready to admit to everybody is pretty terrifying, but I'm going to say it out loud anyway. I had a moment about a month ago. I had this moment of clarity that terrified me on what was going on. I have this fear of, I think I have this fear of being seen. I think I have a fear of being successful on my own merit. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I have been successful in my career working for somebody else. Mm-hmm. So I've been successful working under somebody else's banner. I acknowledged and recognized that I suddenly had developed this fear, and it's all surrounding this podcast, this fear of being successful under my own banner, meaning me. Mm-hmm. I am the quote unquote company. It's me. And the fear just terrified me. And a friend of mine, and I had, guys, it was the ugly cry. I totally was like, had a breakdown. I left this rambling message for one of my friends, and it's like, I don't know what's wrong. So I had this, it was.
I know the ugly cry so well.
Full on snot, and I'm driving. Oh, that's a perfect scenario, right? So she sends me this quote, and I want you to comment on A, why I'm feeling this weird fear, mm-hmm. and 2, this quote that she sent me. And this quote that she sent me is by Marianne Williamson.
Mm-hmm. I know this one. I know exactly what you're going to read.
I won't read everything, but I will read the bits and pieces of it. It says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most. When she left me this quote, it was like this. Like she hit me with a bolt of lightning, and I went, oh my God, that's what's going on. So I will shut up so you can comment on this weird fear that I've developed all of a sudden. And what do I do about it?
Yeah. Oh, it's such a good quote. I love this conversation, and I really acknowledge and in great appreciation of your willingness to be transparent and vulnerable. And that was very brave of you for admitting the ugly cry in the car about, like you allowing yourself to receive the recognition and the bigness involved in being successful as you. And so it's so number one, so common. It's like, I think all of us have that potential within us. And I think especially women, we are like, we try harder. We simply have to, because we're participating in these systems that have really been designed to not allow us to be equally recognize and to create success for ourselves. And so I think that we have it in our, you mentioned this earlier, in our DNA, wired into us as human beings, but also as women, that we're like, we should play small. We need to be quiet, sit still, don't be too much, don't be too big, don't be too loud, all of that stuff. And so when we have, and by the way, I went through it myself, right? Like with my own business, and it comes up still because it's like, it's woven into the fabric of our being. It's hard to just let this shit go and have it be gone. Like, it doesn't go away forever. It just like comes up in some other form, shape, or fashion somewhere else down the road. But it's so common because we especially as entrepreneurs, I see it in my clients all the time, that there's this, like, the idea of being seen and known as ourselves is so scary because, like, our brand is us, right? It's us. And if we succeed, amazing. But there's also like lots of really weird potential on the other side of that. Like, there's, like the possibility that you succeed and then, oh shit, you take a nosedive and you fail. Or there's, you succeed and then, oh shit, somebody's going to take advantage of me, or it's all going to be taken away, or like, who knows what, right? Or, oh shit, I succeed and then my spouse doesn't like me anymore, or my friends leave me, or my family doesn't respect me. Like, there's so many possibilities and potentialities that our mind really can just like chew on and dig into and go crazy with. And so, I think there's all of this stuff that's just like part of who we are as human beings, as women human beings, or women identifying human beings. And that are like, what's so awesome is that that it's there. That awareness to me is like half of the journey, because so many of us, like, I would say, I don't know, I'm just going to like take a blanket guess based on zero data whatsoever, that like 95% of human beings are living in their like automatic processes. They're not aware. They're just going through the motions. And so what I love so much about you and this podcast and what you've built here and what you're committed to doing is that you are curious because you are willing to grow. You want to get uncomfortable. You're willing to lean into that. You're willing to explore. You're willing to look at it. And I think that level, like, allowing and being willing for the awareness to be there, like getting to the point where you can say, oh my gosh, I see this thing now and I can't unsee it. Like, that is really tricky, because anybody that's like just running around doing the thing and like not paying attention, if they, for some reason, like in some like blinding flash, had a moment where they had the awareness and then they saw the thing that was holding them back, then they have, like, now we're faced with a choice. And if they're too uncomfortable and not equipped to then meet that choice head on and say, like I was saying in the beginning, right? Like, I can either stay in this stagnant, dying place and continue to be comfortable, or what my mind thinks is comfortable, because really it's just me not being me. And not being me requires so much energy and effort, and that is not actually comfortable. It's just familiar. Then, like, I just like, let me just go here and sit with the discomfort of this unfamiliar, the unknown, and see what else might be possible. And so I think it's really common, this idea that if I succeed, that is equally as scary as if I fail. What if I'm too much? I could also be not enough. It's like this black and white thing. And so I think that the opportunity that we have as humans and as women and as business owners, especially, or brands, like people who are putting ourselves in the spotlight for whatever reason or another, is to lean into the idea that it's worth doing because it's worth doing. Like, we have a mission. You have a really cool mission, Audra. It is so awesome. And it is so worth doing, that can help, I think, supersede that fear of, oh shit, it's me and my success, right? But like, you have a responsibility because you are doing this thing. So you have a responsibility to do that. But at the same time, like, bringing kindness to yourself, to know that it's okay to be afraid, and it's okay to do it incrementally, and to like warm yourself to it. And you don't have to dive off the 500-foot bridge into the Hudson River. You can, like, take the circuitous path down the bank and, like, trip on a stump on the way, and then like see a squirrel and maybe move off in the wrong direction for a minute and then circle back, and just know that you're always, like, as long as you're committed and aware and sensing when those choice points show up, and just keep choosing the hard because the good is on the other side, like with trust and faith that the good is always on the other side of that, then I think that's what helps us to allow ourselves to be willing to say, oh, it feels really fucking scary to be, seen, to be known, to succeed under my own name, and like all the what ifs that are on the other side of that. But it's worth doing, and I'm going to do it because my audience needs it, my community needs it, I need it, my kids need it, my daughter, 7-year-old, needs to see what that looks like, because I want that for her, I want that for everybody else, and I want it for me.
I don't think that I could have said that any better than that, because the entire point of this entire show is to create connection and to remove the fear out of our lives, to become anything that we want to be, and to allow ourselves to dream and lean into that dream, even though those dreams are terrifying. Guys, trust me, this dream that I've created is terrifying, but it is so worth doing. And everything that you're dreaming about is going to be worth doing. So don't take my word for it. Take Amy's words for it. She believes in you. She knows you can do it. She's built an entire company on teaching people how to lean into the fear and do it anyway. Mm-hmm. So I want everybody to just take that leap and lean into their fear just a little bit today. Just a little. And then tomorrow, maybe a little more, and see what happens. Amy, I can't thank you enough for you being here and talking to me about this concept of fear and how we can use it to our benefit. If people wanted to reach out to you, ask you questions, talk to you more about this, even, perhaps inquire about coaching or whatever it is that they need from you, how would they reach you?
Thank you for asking. Thank you for having me too. Before I even share that, I just want to tell you what an awesome conversation this has been and how grateful. I love talking about this stuff. It's so fun, and it's so much more rewarding when it's with somebody who's as curious and committed to growth and curiosity as you are. And I just love that I get the opportunity to share this conversation with you, and that then your audience gets to benefit from it, I hope. So thank you for this. And, the best ways to find me are online. I'm at amybirks.com. If you're curious about these types of conversations, my best friend Kelly, who I mentioned earlier in the show, she and I have a cool thing called the Epic Experiment. It's amybirks.com/epic. And it's just like a window into more conversations just like this that she and I are constantly having. And super easy, low barrier to entry to come and hang out with us over there. And then if your listeners, any of them are a founder of a purposeful brand, a purpose-driven business owner who's trying to scale, and they want to do it without having to sacrifice the things that really matter, like time freedom, right? We talked a lot about time today. Profitability, fun, things like that, then, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. My moniker on LinkedIn, I think, is like Strategy Ninja, like LinkedIn.in/Strategy Ninja. Or again, you can find me on my website and drop me a line there, and we could hop on a call and chat.
I'll make sure that everybody has access to your contact information. I'll make sure that it's all in the show notes, your link to your website, as well as to your LinkedIn bio. Thank you once again for being here with me, being really transparent with me with your fear and allowing me to be transparent with mine. I appreciate that. And I want to thank all of you for listening, and we'll see you again next time.
This is just the beginning.
That's our show. I am so grateful for each and every one of you and your unwavering support and your continued belief in this movement that has become much bigger than me, much bigger than just a podcast. It has become this forward momentum that we are all doing together. If you are ready, or you know somebody that is ready to tell your story and share your value with the world, please connect with me. You can reach me at audra@womeninthearena.net. I am so honored and thankful that you will share your story with me, and I'll make sure that it is well taken care of. I will never stop thanking each and every one of you, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next week as we share another woman's story and we celebrate her doing extraordinary things in plain sight. We'll see you next time.